I'm going to just keep going on so we were talking about how it was okay to get angry and that you need to be able to get angry when someone's at fault, right, Sarah?
Yes, yes.
So, but one of the questions that she also asked her at some point, she asks, how do I let go? I'm assuming sometimes anger can really eat at you, and she wants to know how does she let go of that anger that she has?
I am not at all minimizing the pain when I say this, but it does at some point become a choice. It becomes a choice as to what are you going to do with the anger. Are you going to let the anger be explosive and outward? Are you going to become depressed, which is turning the anger inward? Or are you going to take action on your anger? So I think that there are a lot of people who may not seem to be angry, but what they have done with that anger is it has become fuel for them to be a part of Joey's legacy, for them to be a part of finding veterinarians who will speak up for the rights of their patients. I think that's where your decision lies in whether or not you're going to continue to allow it to become destructive.
Uh, you know, one of the things about I've always said is much like children, when a parent has a child and again, I'm not minimizing the grief for any difference, whether it's a child, a parent, a brother, a sister, whatever it is. When you have a pet, I think sometimes it's really hard because it becomes for their lifetime a routine we get into because we're caregivers for those animals 24/7. And so it's not just the the anger that can take place, but your routine gets completely destroyed as well because all of a sudden I get up every morning at 6 a.m. I feed my pets, I do this, I go through, I clean the litter box, I do all of these things. And I feel like that's part of it too, where the grieving process is also part of my whole life changed. I didn't just lose somebody, but now I don't know what to do with myself because I was doing that. Have you had that happen a lot with people?
Yes, I think that our animals often become a part of our identity. My dogs' names are Chloe Jill and Dixie Jane. And so I am Chloe Jill and Dixie Jane's mom. And Chloe Jill is right beside me, very interested in what I'm doing right now. um,
Yeah.
and it is when they have had to be hospitalized or taken to the groomer or anything that separates me from them, I have some separation anxiety. Not as badly as my 90-pound pit bull does, but I do have some separation anxiety. I am more apt to call them. And part of it is because of why we're here with Joey's Legacy, is I want to know what they're doing. Um, they are absolutely safe creatures. They're safe. They don't respond to us negatively. They may back up or they may growl at us, but they're not. Um, they're not. Well, I have one that sasses back actually,
I
but
have I have that color running around.
um, I think that what happens is that it is part of our routine. It's our identity, and so we have to find an identity outside of being the parent of our pet. And I think that's one of the steps that has to be intentional. Is what am I going to do to fill part of my time, not all of my time? What am I? You can't eliminate it, but for example, you said you get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to feed your animals. If you did not have animals, what would you be doing at 6 o'clock? Would you be up anyway? Would you be sleeping? What would you be doing? And so for me, I would definitely be sleeping.
Me
I have my dogs on um, a, a routine that fits my hours because I am up very late at night and then I don't get up until very late in the morning. So there, we've just shifted everything. Um, I found it very difficult to spend time alone when our dog died, and we just lost a dog about a year ago, and we lost one during COVID. So I have grandpuppies too, and so we lost two grandpuppies, one in January and one in November, and And that was very difficult because holidays are always holidays with all the grandpuppies. I have no grandchildren. So all the grandpuppies and the kids. And I would love to be a grandmother, but I am absolutely delighted and perfectly happy being a grandmother to puppies. So, I think you're right on target when you say it's a part of our routine.
Yeah, it definitely becomes a part of your routine. I mean, I've even had people, situations happen like just coming home and seeing the dog bowl sitting there, very pretty tragic. And I think people have to get to that point where they either put those away or they can accept that, you know, they're going to either look at them or put them away. So I think that's very different for everybody. Have
Mm-hmm.
you, I'm going to come back to being, this particular person who's asking questions. Her dog's name is Madeline. Um, One of the things that I think is interesting about her case that she talks about is that part of the anger, or, and I'm speaking maybe for her a little bit, is that when the veterinarian isn't punished, or however you want to talk about it, when we're talking about veterinary malpractice and they get away with it, I guess is the best way to talk about it. Like Scott would be able to obviously talk about it. That's a different kind of an anger. And I feel like it would linger a lot longer when you're watching somebody. It's kind of like if a drunk driver hits somebody and then you see him drinking and driving again, and you that struggle to stop it from happening to somebody else, and you can't. How would somebody like Scott, well, we know what Scott did. Scott said, I am going to stop it, not just for, my little area, but for everybody. But for somebody who doesn't do that, what can you do? How do you get through that part of the grief that your hands are tied?
I think you hit it right there when you said that it's very much like a drunk driver who then you are going through the court system. Some of the people I've talked to have had cases, and the cases have lingered on and on and on. And some of them have been found where the veterinarian was given a harsh, um, was sanctioned, was given a harsh punishment, was stripped of their right to practice, and then through not even an appeal, but through just what would seem like indifference, that veterinarian was given rights back. Very frustrating. It's a matter again of you have to separate out in your life so that it doesn't cripple your entire life. Most of us have to work. We have to be able to go to work. We have relationships. It's interesting in the death of a child, 85% of parents divorce after the death of a child. I don't know what the statistics are. I'd love to do some work on that, but I would say to you that from the people I have talked to, that there has very often been a chasm that has been created because of the different way that people grieve. Someone grieves because they come home and they get everything out of the way. I remember this happened once to someone I knew. Came home, took the water bowl up, the dog bowl up, the bed, everything was gone. Their intention was to prevent the spouse from suffering, coming in the door and seeing all of that without the pet. It happened to have been the wife that did it. The husband came in the door and nothing was there. Flipped out, flipped out. I wasn't ready for that. So you almost can't win. People grieve so differently. I have things. In fact, my husband will tell you I have things that I don't even know where they came from. That I have things. And I have a storage locker full of things that have specific memory to me. So I have the dog collars of every dog I have ever owned. Um, my husband one day said to me, Are you going to do anything? Were you going to, like, I'm not being funny, but Sarah, but are you going to make a display, or what are you going to do with all of them? And I said, they're in my treasure chest, and they're going to be in my treasure chest. But for someone else, they paint or they do something. I think we have to be really respectful of each other when there's a loss, because I have worked with several um, people, and I'm not sure that they are still married. Over the last couple of years of working with Joey's legacy, I have worked with individuals who were grieving so differently than their spouses that there was almost an unbreakable crack or an unfixable crack. And I have to say this to you, those cracks, you hear the other one's now crying, she's not included in this. Um, the We have to understand that it is different, but there has to be conversation. That's one of the biggest things is conversation in the family, conversation with people who are safe, talking through what's going on.
Is there, when, we always hear about the grieving process and stages. Is there, are there this, are the stages the same for any loss, or do you think that there's a difference in the stages for pets versus
Well,
humans?
I have a great deal of respect for Kubler Ross, and she wrote the book on the 5 stages of. I would hardly disagree, however, that in any type of grief there are 6,472 stages, and they are all scrambled up, and you may find yourself bouncing from denial to acceptance to anger to denial again to acceptance to just bouncing back and forth. Yes, the grief stages can be the very same that they are with human loss, but there are far more because we are so different as people. um, it is very easy for some people to go into denial. That is a standard go to for them when things are uncomfortable, when things are painful, when things are negative, they default to denial. Or there are some who are very process driven, who I remember having surgery on my back. I'm one of those people. Having surgery on my back once, and they told me it would be 6 to 9 months before I would recover. So I, in my haughty little self of probably 25 at that point, said, well, if it usually takes 6 months, I'm going to do it in 3. I mean, come on. These are doctors who have lots of experience for lots of years and know how long it takes for the body to heal. But I was going to be the overachiever and I was going to do it less. So there are a lot of people out there grieving who say, okay, I've been grieving for a month now. That's enough. I'm done. If they're not done, they've just postponed it biting them in the butt at a later time. Until you look at it, feel all of it, talk about it, find the compartments that you have in your own life where you can put these little pieces, it will continue to come back and it will be magnified by other losses that may seemingly be not as big. Um, Losing a job is tremendously um, upsetting to most people, losing a job and losing employment. But I've found that people who lose a job after they've lost a pet have a harder time rebounding to be able to go and look for another job. It's icing on the cake.
Do you find, or have you met anybody that has done this? Because I know a lot of times what is so frustrating for people when they lose a pet is that feeling of the veterinarian is still practicing, they're still doing this, they have the possibility of doing it. But from my experience, and I've, like I said, I've been in the industry for 36 years, and Scott has agreed with this. Most veterinarians are good veterinarians. That's just the general consensus that we say. The veterinarians that I know, had they done something that may be considered malpractice, but to them also a mistake that they made. Maybe it's because they just weren't experienced enough, or because they just didn't weren't taught that part, whatever it is. Do you think it would help somebody whose pet was kind of on the line for that type of death, where it was more, not, I don't want to say more of an accident, but would it help for someone like that to go back to that veterinarian and say, can you tell me what you're doing to make sure this doesn't happen to another pet? Would that help, or could that make it worse?
Most professionals have huge egos. And so you attack an ego when you suggest that there possibly could be the same thing happening again. There also is a fear of litigation, even though that particular practice is pretty well barricaded. And so I think that it's better to find care groups, groups like Joey's Legacy, where you can talk through some of the things. One of the projects I was working with a couple of gals, one of the projects we had was to formulate an intake form that would allow the pet parent to ask questions of the they would interview the veterinarian at the same time the veterinarian was getting background on the animal, they were getting background on the veterinarian. Are there any particular types of veterinary medicine you prefer not to be involved in? Do you have more experience in any one type? Do you deal with only four-legged animals, or do you deal with birds and with reptiles? Because there's a different care. If people can't tell by looking at them, there's a very different care, different protocols. But I think that especially if it's immediately, you could write a letter to a veterinarian, have somebody else proofread it to make sure that you're not attacking or accusing, but that you're really doing what you say you're doing, which is asking questions. Um, some of the some of the pieces that are involved in true veterinary negligence, and I say true because I have also had clients in my private practice who have come, who have been sure that the veterinarian was responsible because their 24-year-old dog died. And the 24-year-old dog had 12-year history of cancer. And I'm varying this just enough that I'm not, you know, um, breaking any confidentiality, but had a long health history, lots of difficulty. The dog dies at 24 years old, and the person is sure that the veterinarian didn't do something they could have done. So I know Scott is very careful when he's listening to things and why he has veterinarians review cases and to make sure that we're looking at malfeasance, negligence, um, um, you know, intentional. Um, I met a veterinarian one time who hated animals. And I thought that it was the most bizarre thing in the world because why would you want to do that? And I said, I don't think you like animals. And he said, I don't, but I'd rather be a vet than a doctor for humans because animals won't tell me what to do. And I thought I would pull my dog out of that practice so fast. I mean, we've got that's an unusual situation. Most veterinarians grew up loving animals, wanted to be very proactive for animals, have been a true godsend with the animals, are great people. And I think one of the things that proves it is the amount of people I have vets that I have told about Joey's Legacy who have said, what a great idea. Accountability is so needed. So I think that that speaks to, you know, what Scott's doing, that even among the profession, that they know that something needs to be done.
And definitely, I would imagine you're in support of people joining support groups
Mhm.
to get through stuff
I
like this.
think I think that support groups need to be run by professionals or people who have experienced some of the dynamics. I think if you get into a support group and everybody, number one, the leader of the support group has a need to tell their story over and over and over again. That person should be in a support group, not
No.
lead a support group. And that happens all the time. They find it as a platform where they can tell their story over and over and over and over again. I think that so someone who has been through it but who has learned how to listen, who's learned how to make it about someone else rather than themselves, is really important. Um, I think that being in a support group that is just a an anger mongering group meeting is horrible. There are some human support groups like that where people go and they just are mad. And 21 years after the death of whomever, they're still angry and they haven't found any place to be. It isn't an intellectual anger. It isn't, I'm so angry that this kind of thing is still happening. This is a deep rooted gut level anger with where they're spitting and feuding with each other after 21 years. That's not healthy. That is not appropriately processed anger.
The reason I brought that up is because Andy mentioned something that we all probably that have gone through this have felt. And she says, in my case, it has felt how I'd imagine it would feel like having a child murdered and the killer is found not guilty during trial because the judge and prosecutor are corrupt and tampered with evidence because the killer is an old pal and the trauma is very real to her. And I see this because of this organization, and we are seeing this a lot. I think that that feeling is not, Sandy's not alone in that. That's how Scott feels, how we all feel, is that even if we can get it in front of the judge, it just, the corruption just keeps going and going. So you
Mhm.
can fight and fight and fight to get in front of the judge, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and
and
worse.
and that's true in all levels of law and all levels of justice. You've got a good old boys club in every kind of practice of law. You do also in every profession. I mean, you got meat cutters who will say that the person did exactly what they were supposed to do, even though they took their finger off. And we all know that there was a safety issue that was not probably addressed correctly, but they're somebody's buddy. So you've got people who are going to bend and shape um, what the practices should be always. Um, and you can either let that eat you, you can accept it and say, accepting it meaning acknowledgement. I don't mean accept it as in saying, okay, no biggie, but acknowledge the fact that this is happening. Ask questions. What can I do that's meaningful to change that? That's what Scott's done. He's looked for a meaningful, peaceful way to go after the people who are misrepresenting their profession. I know that Scott is capable of getting angry. I'm sure that he can raise his voice. I know that he can, do whatever the rest of us could do, but he does a really good job of at least moderating that to the point that we're not all inflamed all the time.
We have lost children and have started organizations. Do you think that that's an overall, I know everything's not great for everybody, but do you think that's a really good outlet for some people that is successful, or do more people, I'm always concerned about not being able to move through your grief in a, I don't want to say a time because I don't know what time it is for everybody, but getting stuck, right? So can people who are going through the process and starting organizations like this, is that more of a pro, or can that be a pitfall for people?
I think both. Both. I think the first thing to do is to look and see if there are existing organizations that have been around for a while that seem to be moving forward. And those are good organizations to connect with. I think that everybody wants their situation or feels that their situation is just enough different that they want to bring some awareness about their situation. It happens a lot with children who have died at the hands of drunk drivers. And we had the National Organization Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, which has been in existence for many years. We also have advocacy groups that are going into the schools and talking to high school students about drinking and driving. Now, should everybody who loses a child to uh, a drunk driver start an organization? They can. I mean, they certainly can. Are they going to be effective for themselves and for the other people? Possibly, but probably not, because what they will find is that they will have their family and friends who remain a part of their organization, but it doesn't grow because other people are starting theirs and who's starting theirs and that kind of thing. So I would say always to look for a local or national organization that is doing what you want to fight, take advantage of what they've learned, put in the things you're learning along the way, and work together as a team. There's always more effectiveness when you have a team of people working on something. Would you
Yeah.
say that, Scott? Because you did you find anything else like what you were doing?
Like what I'm doing? No, I've not found it on my own. I've not been told, pardon me, told about it. And I appreciate what you just said as far as I want to make Joey's team effort than ever before. We're approaching 2,600 members, and there's only a small percentage that really are active and step up and share the message. They'll put posters up around where they live, Joey's posters, and the message is getting around for sure. Jerry Rob's book is selling very well on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. It's over here in Books a Million where I live. So the message is getting out, and then we're doing the documentary, which will even expand the number of people that will actually
Mm-hmm.
become aware of what we're doing. So I can't do it by myself, and I appreciate every single person that does something to
Mm-hmm.
help us get our message and our mission advanced.
I think having taking some ownership in
Yes,
helping. I think everybody wants to take ownership, but nobody wants to do the work.
right,
And so, it's like having a vanity tag on your car that
right,
says United States Marine Corps because you support You're not a Marine, you've never
right.
been a Marine, but you got United States Marine Corps there. It's what does it mean?
It's a
So,
good.
my thought would be this is a tried and proven group. This is a group that is going somewhere. It's
Right.
doing something. Is it going to meet the needs of every single person in every single situation? No.
No,
But it is a group of people who have a common goal, and that is the protection and care of their companion animals, that they are treated with dignity and with skill.
right,
Um, and rather than have 10 groups all named, with mine, I lost Isis Marie and her name, what she was named before Isis was not a name you would use. So Isis Marie and Shelby Jean, they're all double names, we're Southerners. Um, if we had a Shelby Jean legacy and an Isis Marie and a Jerry Gay, would that be as powerful as joining forces with the Joey's legacy? And I would say, in my opinion, that it would not be. That it would be a lot of effort and work spinning in sand and covering ground that's already been covered.
yeah.
But has legacy, have you moved through the grieving process with Joey's legacy, or is it make it hard for you to be reminded all the time?
Well, I'm kind of in a very unique position, Carrie. I believe. Um, I've spoken to somewhere between 400 and 500 people that have come to me over the last 4 years with allegations of malpractice or negligence in the veterinary profession. And every story is horrific and goes in my heart. So it's like a fighter that keeps getting punched one punch right after another. It's hard to recover from in terms of I can honestly say uh, I would notwithstanding. Well, let me say it this way: with the exception of the veterinarians on our team, I would have a very difficult time if I could even do it at all, bringing another companion animal into my home and entrusting the animal into the care of a veterinarian other than the vets on our team who I've become very familiar with and I feel very close to. Even if they were a referral from a friend or family member. And I just did a post on this recently. Uh, my level of trust is basically zero, unfortunately. I'm happy to say that I think I'm sort of in the minority because if everyone felt like I did, I don't know how many shelter animals to homes and then provided care by veterinarians. If the person couldn't trust the veterinarian, it kind of creates a dilemma, I believe. Uh, but in terms of me myself, I with what I'm doing and the number of people I've spoken to over the last 4 years, I'm very jaded. My opinion is very jaded. So I don't know that I could be objective in very many areas.
Well,
It's just
no, that's actually a question I'm going to lead into asking is how do you, and when you're, we've talked about grief can be different for everybody. It can last long and it can be forever and it can go through all these stages. But how do you trust someone again? How do you bring the trust back?
you know what, that's a question. I don't know. I don't have the tools. I don't
Yeah,
know how to do that. Especially after close to so much, and of what really goes on in the profession. And notwithstanding that, I will repeat what I usually start these roundtables with. About 80% of the people that join Joey's Legacy state they've never had a bad experience with a veterinarian. So, based on that statistic alone, regardless of my personal feelings and the feelings of a lot of the members of the group, we have to remain grounded in reality that the majority of veterinarians do a good job or do at least provide competent care. I'll take the low road there. They at least provide competent care. If a person says I've never had a bad experience, and again, things can happen that they're not aware of because they may not be as well informed as they should be, and that's part of the reason we want to educate people.
Mhm.
Uh, if they haven't lost or a companion uh, animal hasn't been permanently injured due to the actions of a veterinarian, they consider themselves lucky or successful, however you want to look at it.
that is something that I but without trying to scare everybody, but a lot of times veterinary malpractice doesn't always end up with death. And sometimes that veterinary malpractice you will never know
Right.
even happened because your pet can't speak to you. So there's all sorts of those that happen and but 12 years of working in veterinary practice, I have seen veterinary malpractice. I know it exists, but it's a very small percentage. It is a very small percentage, not only of the veterinarians that are doing it, but how often it happens even in one clinic with one bad veterinarian. Every case is not a case of where they're doing something that is veterinary malpractice, but uh, Sarah, how would someone, a lot of us do this, we all do this when, well, not everybody, but a lot of us, I have done it. You lose a pet, then you go and get another pet because it's what a lot of us do. But if you're a victim of veterinary malpractice, is that where you end up being, where you can't get another pet because you would never want? I can completely understand Scott's reasoning for not getting a pet. I can't trust anyone to ever, and I'm not a veterinarian, so how would I take care of my animal? Is there something that people can do to help regain that trust?
I this is probably going to sound very dramatic, and I don't mean this. I don't mean to minimize infidelity, but I find that the kind of mistrust, what I hear my clients say, and I hear the words I hear used by people who are coming to me through Joey's Legacy, sounds very similar. And that is, it blindsided them. It was not anything they expected. They thought that all of the uh, deal breakers were on the table. That they were so shocked that they will never trust another man or woman. They will never trust another veterinarian. Um, and I think that that's when questions have to be asked. I think that asking yourself, what do you expect of your veterinarian? And that sounds as though I'm going to go into a thing of, well, he's human or this or that. No. What do you expect? What should you expect from your veterinarian? And I think making a list of those things and being equipped with that. I think going into a situation with a veterinarian and saying, I had a very bad experience with my fur baby, and I'll give you my personal experience with this. I had a dog who was raised to be a police dog. My husband and I were both in law enforcement, and through a situation with a neighbor who swore that she saw that my dog had tangled with a possum, the dog was quarantined, and the veterinarian in our area, who still is in practice, quarantined the dog for 6 months, and the dog was only 4 months old. So the dog's chances of ever being a service dog were gone. There were malformations in the dog. The dog couldn't stand up straight because it was put in a crate that was too small. Ears never went up. One finally did. And then when we got her out, and she was actually my son's dog, and bless his heart, he earned the $3 a day. No, how much was it? It's $180 a month. So whatever that is, $6 a day. He earned the $6 a day to keep his dog in quarantine because the choice was putting her down, and we didn't want to put down. So we would go and visit her. I got very skeptical, and not only of this doctor who would not allow anybody to visit the dog, but what were the rules about quarantining a dog? It's usually 10 days to 2 weeks. The possum was not found to be rabid. So what were we doing? But the veterinary board in the state of Florida said that it was up to this particular veterinarian because he was the one that was used by the um, officials in the area. What happened later, because I already had a fear in me of what was going to happen, was that she began to get very sick. And I took her to a veterinarian and then to a holistic veterinarian who put her on milk thistle and different things to detox her. She was doing well, but she had kind of shadows. If anyone knows anyone with lupus, they talk about butterflying under the eyes. And she had this, what I call butterflying. Took her to the vet, a new vet in town, who told me that we had neglected the dog. It was abuse of the dog, and he was reporting me to animal control, where they were going to do what? They were going to quarantine her. And so I took my dog, who was about 125 pounds. I took her under one arm. I marched out of his office. I took her home, and I never took her to a vet again. She died at 9 when Hurricane Katrina came through, I think, or Wilma. It was just, she just gave up the ghost, to put it that way. She was so stressed out, and she needed care, but I couldn't find anybody that I trust. That's how mistrust was my piece of his malpractice, which was, calling names, not offering any kind of a solution to her problem, which turned out later that to be during a necropsy that she was diabetic, which nobody had ever checked. So I think that asking questions and saying, I've had a very bad experience. This is what I would do with my physician. I've had a very bad experience with a veterinarian in the past. I don't feel as though I was listened to. I don't feel that the veterinarian gave me all of the possibilities of the treatment that they had chosen. I don't feel like they did a good drug screening and asked me if they'd had any side effects from anything. And I want to know from you, do you ask those questions? Do you have the time, the space, the expertise to be questioned? Are you going to take that against your ego if I ask you 1,000,001 questions? Because this is my fur baby. She is my responsibility. If you find a veterinarian who gets all huffy and puffy about that, I would go right out the door.
Yeah.
If you find one that says to you, I am so sorry for what you've been through, and I will do my very best, and we'll talk through treatment plans, and we'll talk through the pros and cons, and this is what I'm specialized in, and this is what I don't know a thing about, then that is a provider that I would test. That's one that I would have my dog go to for just regular exams, see how they were treated, and then, be willing possibly. But I think that it's conversations. They do us as much good as they do the veterinarian, but it's really putting the veterinarian in a very nice, humble way on alert. This is an educated fur baby mom. This is a pet parent who knows what they want. and who knows what they're not going to put up with. And so I think that that's a part of building the trust again. And I got that really from thinking about how do people ever marry again when there has been infidelity. Well, they have lots of conversations, don't they? You
Yeah.
know, sort of the knife at the throat of the other guy saying, if you ever. Do you see this? Well, I'm not going to pull a knife on a veterinarian, but I'm going to ask them very hard questions.
Yeah. And I think that, I'm looking at a lot of the comments said, and Sandy and Marcia and Stephanie are all trust is clearly
Mm-hmm.
something that is going to be really hard. And I will tell you, I work now, my business is I have a boarding and grooming facility, and I have people come to me and say, I had my dog get injured at a grooming shop before. And I love those clients because I love to talk to them and say, this is what I can provide for you. And sometimes I can't guarantee that they won't get a nick or a cut because they're moving when we've got sharp scissors, but I'm open about that with them. This is what I can tell you. If this were to happen, this would be the steps I would take. And I
Mm-hmm.
also everywhere. And if you ever question anything that I do, I will
Mm-hmm.
provide you with the camera footage so you can see for yourself because
Mm-hmm.
I understand that. I've had animals get injured in my facility before, and the first thing I want to do is give them the video footage just to make them feel better. Even though I know we didn't do anything, I think it just you just need it. You just
Mm-hmm.
need it. So and sometimes people feel really bad because you'll feel better. And so I think you bring up
Well,
such a
what are the question? What are the questions you would ask a child care center
yeah,
when you were taking your child? I mean, and I probably asked, to be honest with you, I asked more questions of my veterinarian than I ever did of my child care providers.
yeah,
I went in and the same way I did with my fur babies. I'd see the health health department certification. I'd look at, how happy the children were that were there. I'd look and see at the end of the day were a lot of them coming out with bumps and scratches and screaming. And, I'd look at those things that were very superficial. But I don't know that I don't think I ever asked, how many accidents have you had in a year? How many children have been seriously hurt in your care? And now looking back, I would be such a much better mother now, knowing what I know now than I was then. You just don't know what you don't know. So I think that we together, that's one of the things that we were working on was the type of a questionnaire to ask a veterinarian. And there shouldn't be, and they should be talking in the same tone of voice I'm talking in, non-threatening, not not angry, and not complaining about the other veterinarian. There is by name. There is a certain thing that happens. You can have the worst spouse in the world, but nobody else better say a thing about them. You may think all those things, but nobody else better say it. And it's the same thing with veterinarians, I think, is there is a certain allegiance to a point of you're not going to just disrespect the profession. You
right.
can disrespect the person, but don't disrespect the profession. We need them. We need competent veterinarians. I don't want them to say, don't let her in. Don't let her in, when I need them.
Yeah. It's one of the things that just because some of the questions that are coming across right now, not necessarily questions, but a lot of comments about, you know, going to a holistic veterinarian, for example. I just want to caution everybody that um, that's she makes a really good point. I got to go. I can't find the question again, but she said she's going to try a holistic vet because at least they won't give heavy drugs that would kill. Like she's kind of like, I get what she's saying. I'm stuck. I don't want my dog to be given drugs that's going to die. So if I go to a holistic veterinarian, at least herbs aren't going to kill my dog.
Mm.
And she makes a very good point,
Mhm.
but there are some things that can go wrong there. So just be really careful with that. But and there are a lot of holistic veterinarians that are not truly holistic veterinarians. So you have to be really careful
Well,
with that.
I think that the interesting thing in our case was the man who accused me of being neglectful and abusive and taking my dog to a snake handler is now a homeopathic veterinarian in our county.
Hmm. Yeah, it's
So I won't go to him now either. So
that's the thing, is that it's not, caution you because I've worked with some of those holistic veterinarians. But here's another point when we were talking about cameras and asking and considering, speaking and having that conversation with your new vet and being upfront with them and letting them know what you went through, which is so important. But one of, and I had mentioned, asking, like, I provide cameras. If you want to see, I can show you what went on. Uh, but one of the reasons that's so important is because a lot of the malpractice that I've seen actually happened because of the vet tech or because of the receptionist or because of the kennel attendant. It's not, it falls on the veterinarian, but a lot of it
Mm-hmm.
puts trust in this vet tech to watch the anesthesia machine or that, those kind of things happen. And so it's interesting because Paul, and I apologize if I said that wrong, he mentions, why so many vet techs don't speak up and they don't say anything. And I think the reason for that is because a lot of times they're as guilty as the veterinarian
Mm-hmm.
in cases.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, and so they don't want to bring light to it because they also are at fault for doing these things. And that's the other reason why those cameras are so important, because it kind of keeps everybody on check. And if the cameras are on you, you're going to probably be less likely to do something. And so I always say in all of my podcasts that I've done on safety in these places is you really want to go to a place that has, some checks and balances.
Mm-hmm.
That will help you with the trust. And that's why I'm bringing it up, is that just knowing that somebody's willing to give that to you, I think speaks volumes as to what kind of place you're walking into.
I find that the veterinary techs are far more um, defensive than the veterinarians. So I've seen one of my dearest friends is a veterinary tech, and when she heard that I um, had joined Joey's Legacy and that I was going to try to help with some of the grief issues, she said, "Don't believe everything you hear." And I said, "Why would you say that?" And she said, "Because the vets are going to now see her thing was the vets are going to blame it on the vet techs." And I said, "Okay, all right, well, I've heard what you said and I'll keep that in mind." And then later on she said, "They have to go to school for a really long time." And I said, I know they do. And veterinary techs are certified. I mean, they're not, for the most part, unless it's somebody who's an appointment setter who gets called in to do surgery, which we've heard of, get calls in to do something. And that's happening in the human world. I can tell you horror stories. I've dealt with malpractice for many, many years, just not veterinary malpractice. And some of the horror stories of things that happen because people are tired, they're addicted to the medication they prescribe. They have, I live in Palm Beach County. Palm Beach County is the drug rehab capital of the world. That's not anything we're particularly proud of, but we have over 600 rehab centers in Palm Beach County. And if you looked at how many people come from other areas, it's either Santee in Texas or it's Palm Beach County where the professionals come, whether they're doctors, attorneys, veterinarians. That's where they come, is to Palm Beach County or Santee, Texas. So,
It's a that's what I'm hoping so much with the documentary, is that we're going to expose so much of what's going on right now. Where the conversations coming through, or a lot of people on here are talking about vet techs and whether they're licensed or not licensed. And back when I was a veterinary technician, there really wasn't a license. I'm that old. So sorry, but there wasn't. There now. Back in my day, there there really wasn't a license to get. There was, but no one really got it because you just kind of worked in the back. And Paul says, he says there are kids practicing on our pets in the back room, and is some people may think that's very over dramatic, but he's not wrong. He's not wrong. It's very young a lot of times. So that's the other thing that I think will help build the trust with the veterinarian, is to ask if their vet techs are licensed, if they're registered veterinary technicians, because a lot of
mm-hmm.
times, and all that,
Need to move forward.
the bad actors will be bad actors no matter what. But so the license does, obviously, or we wouldn't have veterinarian malpractice if, you know what I mean? Like a license protects you from those things happening. But those are some things I think work on to try to help build the trust so that people still feel comfortable. It breaks my heart that Scott isn't able to get that love from an animal again because of his fear of taking his pet to a veterinarian.
Mhm.
That really breaks my heart. So let's talk a little bit about. I know we mentioned about grieving process being different, but is there a we don't want people. I had mentioned earlier about getting stuck in your grief. Is there kind of a move like the way that it should be moving? Maybe not necessarily time, but is there a point where you would say, look, it's been 20 years and you're still crying every single night? When do we say we're not moving and we're stuck and we need a push?
Okay. This is not going to be a popular answer.
Yeah.
Um, if after 3 years you find yourself still as angry, with no outlet, still as um, just demolished in tears, then it's time to get professional help. Because what's happening is that you have there's an excuse me interesting chemistry that happens in the brain, and I am a neuropsychologist actually, and so I speak to that because there are some things going on in the brain that can cause very overt depression. Your different levels of chemicals, and I'm not a psychiatrist, so I'm not going to profess to know everything about that, but I can just tell you that there are different um, chemicals in the brain that are produced, and trauma sometimes stunts that. And so you're not producing the levels that you should of various things that keep your mood steady. Being angry all the time is a mood disturbance. It is not just a visceral, if you cannot stop being angry at the point of, this, that's mood disturbance. Now, is that mental illness? No, it's not mental illness in the way we think of a perpetual illness such as bipolar depression or schizophrenia, and neither of those are dishonorable. I mean, they're both clearly, but they too are mood disorders. Well, schizophrenia is a thought disorder, but so I think that 3 years becomes a situation with humans losing humans and humans losing. It doesn't mean that tears don't envelop you sometimes. It doesn't mean that you can't be infuriated and find that something triggers you. But if you spend your life angry, if you spend your life not wanting to go out anywhere, in tears, isolating, um, not finding enjoyment in anything, you need to see a professional. And I would start with your family doctor and say, I am in the process of grieving. I think it's always important to say, I'm in the process of grieving and I'm having a real hard time getting through it. It doesn't mean you have to go and say, I need drugs. It means you have to let someone check you, give you a good physical, see if there's anything else that's amiss. Sometimes it's a thyroid problem that's getting you depressed. Sometimes it's something else that's causing the anger, but you owe it to yourself. You're worthy of knowing what your physical status is, and that's kind of the trigger. If it's been 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, that's a problem. You may not feel like it's a problem for you because it's comfortable. It's what you're used to. But step out of the comfort zone of being uncomfortable and find out what it is that's causing that prolonged. And if you're still saying it's that veterinarian, it's that doctor, it was that driver, it was that, then you're projecting everything out onto something else. And there's other stuff going on. It's not just that.
That was important because I think sometimes people when they are grieving aren't really sure, you know, what how long is this normal? You know, we hear that a lot. I'm so glad that you said that you did put a time on it because people don't want to put a time on grief, but you're right. If there's a psychological thing that could send you deeper, it should be addressed. So I'm glad
Well,
you
you can. I mean, don't get me wrong. You can still feel feelings of grief
Sure.
and sadness after 3 years. Um, I will grieve the loss of my children until one day I hope to see them in heaven. But I have learned management tools. I've learned coping strategies. I've learned how to stop myself if I get on a jag. And, you know, probably 3 weeks ago, my mother has been dead for 37 years. And 3 weeks ago, something happened. And the whole day, I was a bubbling, I just couldn't stop crying. And my husband said, "What is it?" And I said, "I just miss my mom so much. And this would be a time when she would be having really good conversations with me." And he said, "I'm so sorry that you're feeling that." But he let me go through that. Now, I went to sleep that night, woke up the next day. I was exhausted, but I was fine. So it's not to say you're not going to have moments of anger or of great grieving, but you're not going to be consumed by it and managed by it. You can manage it.
I think it made so nice, it's clear that we're not ever, my brother passed away 26 years ago, and I still have moments of grief, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it did go times where it got better, I guess you can say. You can function and you can get through
Mm-hmm.
life. You can do those kind of things. Can you
Remember
share?
that grief is physical, it's psychological, it's mental, it is a holistic, it's a whole person um, experience. And so sometimes you get the mental and the emotional part, and you're doing pretty good, you think. But you realize you started eating everything you can see in everywhere. Or other times you're not eating everything, but you find now all of a sudden you compulsively just have to run. You're a jogger now. You've never been a jogger, but you're a jogger, and you have to jog to the point of exhaustion. So it brings out compulsions that we try to mask what the hurt is. It hurts. And so if we can do something to try and stop it from hurting, sometimes we'll substitute.
What are some of the tools uh, that seen be helpful for people going through the grieving process? And this is kind of a two part. And is it important to use those tools at different times of the grieving process? Like if you use this too soon, it could backfire kind of thing.
I think in the beginning that getting a lot of rest is really important. I think the beginning of rest is to prepare for the grief. And so usually if a child or an animal, you know, is ill, you have done part of your grieving ahead of time, especially if you get a diagnosis that your dog has cancer, or your dog has, or your loved one has um, pancreatic cancer, or something that is very serious, and you're trying to think, am I doing everything I should? Am I doing everything I could? You are somehow, in some ways, preparing for the fact that it may go south. There is no preparation, however, that you can do that prepares you for the actual act of death. People will tell you, "Well, my dog was sick for a long time. Were you prepared for the dog to die?" No. I thought that I could keep the dog living forever as long as I loved him and fed him, and that he would have the will to keep going. Animals are amazing creatures, and when they have had enough, they have had enough. And you'll talk to pet owners who will tell you, "I knew that it was time. He or she told me." What we're talking about today is animals that basically were screaming, "No, no, no,
Yeah.
not me, not now." And so I think that resting to begin with, making sure that you're eating, drinking lots of water, that you're taking care of yourself, beginning to journal, put things down. You hear that from a lot of psychologists, but it really does work. Putting things down on paper. Um, Putting down things that are stumbling blocks for you. Are there certain topics that you find make you react more than others? Um, Setting a goal sheet, and the goal sheet not being that what am I going to do in 3 months, but more of a today's menu. This is what I have to do tomorrow. These are the things I have to accomplish tomorrow. I need to get up. I need to brush my teeth. I mean, things as simple as that. Getting into a routine. reprogramming your brain to get into a routine that you can depend on. Your body will take over. Once you're used to doing something a few times, your body and your mind will take over and you will be in that routine. And that's when writing thoughts down, um, finding a place where you can safely talk about it. And I have to tell you, with humans and with pets alike, your friends get tired of hearing it. Your friends and your family who are not directly involved, even with family members. When someone loses dad, someone else doesn't want to hear any more about dad. When you lose your fur baby, someone thinks, "Really, you're going to tell me this for the 10th time today?" So find people that are going to be accepting, people that are going to listen to you. Um, and and I will say this to those of you with a faith base: if you're a part of a church of any kind, it's interesting because there are people there who want to have some meaningful purpose. And sometimes it is sitting with them, and they're what we call listeners. They do nothing but listen non judgmentally to what you have to say. It's a human being who will sit with you and will listen with you, will cry with you, will validate what you're feeling. And I'm sure that there are other organizations. I happen to be more familiar with that than you, but that will just listen. Find somebody who's not related to you, who will look at you for what your suffering is and not for what their expectations of you are.
I had put like that, but you're right. I mean, my husband, love him, but he doesn't want to listen to it forever and
Mhm.
ever. So you're right. Sometimes you need to reach outside of that box and talk to somebody. That's such great
Do
advice.
you want to know why? I'm going to tell you why your husband doesn't want to. I'm going to tell on Scott, okay?
Oh,
Men can't fix it, and men
That's
are fixers. Yeah, men are fixers. And so if you come to them and you're crying and you're grieving and there's nothing they can do, then they would rather you go away and do that because then they don't feel guilty that they can't fix it. And if
many, many men,
many.
many men.
I have
yes,
But
learned.
I agree about the fixer part.
Yeah, I have. I will say I have. I have and say this. This is something I don't want you to fix. I
mm-hmm,
just want you to listen.
mm-hmm,
He'll, and he will. He will say, "Okay, I'm off the hook. I'm not fixing anything. I'm just going to listen." And so, but that took me a lot of years to learn how to do it. So
mm-hmm,
if I preface things to him that I don't want you to fix it because you
mm-hmm.
can't,
That's great.
and,
That's
and
excellent.
and then now he knows that he's off 25 years we've been married, but
Well,
have to make
Carrie, when you get through with the pet science, I'd like you to come and work with me with life coaching because that's a really important thing for people to learn in communication skills is what are you expecting out of the conversation?
yeah,
If I say to my husband, I want you to consider something, you don't have to answer me on it. You don't have to, but I'd like for you to consider looking at it this way. And I say it to him that way. He will listen to me, whether or not he absorbs it or doesn't or acts on it. I'm done. I just wanted to be heard. I just
yeah,
wanted to make a suggestion and have it heard. And we've learned to respect each other. We've been married as long as you have. We have learned to respect each other um, in how we communicate with each other because sometimes we take each other for granted.
uh,
You know, you just throw out there, I don't know why you can't understand me. You've been married to me for 25 years, and they're thinking you didn't say anything.
right, right. It is. It's definitely a different. You know, a lot of times, but going back to the dogs, and if you're talking to somebody and you're trying to get through your grief, we have our expectations that we want the listener to do,
Mhm,
but we don't share those. And then when they don't meet those expectations, we're very upset.
mhm,
And and that's why it's so important that if you are going to talk to a friend or a family member about the loss of your pet, it would be beneficial to say to them, look, before I get into this conversation, I want you to know that I feel like my dog's life was lost or my cat's life was lost due to veterinary malpractice, whether you believe that or not, or whether it's been proven or not. You need to know that I feel that. And sometimes we can get a lot better communication that way, and it's
You
so
may want to
important.
even leave the word malpractice out when you're talking. You may want to say through veterinary negligence or through something that the veterinarian did, because malpractice shoots off bells and whistles of negativity to the point that a lot of times people just shut down. They
Yeah,
don't, they think, oh, but if you tell them because of someone failing to do something, then
yeah,
they're leaning in to hear what is it you think they failed to do. And very often they'll say, well, gosh, that sounds like malpractice. And you think, ding, ding, ding. Yes. Yeah.
this next thing that I want to talk about is so very, very important. And Pamela brings this up, and you brought it up when you said that the reason why some men don't want to help you is because they feel guilt if they can't fix it. And so talking about guilt is so important because that's such a powerful, powerful emotion, is to feel guilty about something. And so Pamela brings up the fact that how do you deal with the guilt? Scott could probably talk a little bit about this. How do you
Mhm.
deal with the guilt that you brought your dog to that veterinarian and you gave them the ability to work on your pet? How do you work through that guilt? I have that guilt because I had a dog die from giving him flea and tick medication. I don't necessarily think veterinary malpractice because I think back then nobody knew that that stuff was that toxic. But even I have the guilt. Scott, maybe you want to talk a little bit about what some of
Mhm.
the things you've done to try to get through that.
Well, in Joey's case, his regular vet, who we really liked and never betrayed us in any way, happened to be off that day, and there was another vet, substitute vet, and of course, considering what happened, I've always said to myself, "Gee, if I had a day to bring Joey there, his vet was there the next day, and we ended up bringing him back the next day to try to resolve the issue. That's the day the vet did. We got the diagnosis, which the day before that vet did not do labs. Had we had those labs, we would have had the diagnosis, and presumably Joey wouldn't have received the contraindicated drug. So yeah, I've rehearsed that about 1,000 times, 1,000 in my brain since it happened 4 years ago, and it's just I'll never get over it, but I've learning to or learned or learning to live with it. I just think about it, but and it doesn't devastate me like it did in the beginning, but it's still very hurtful, and I will carry those feelings of guilt for probably forever. Um, and you know, and we spent I think 5 1-hour sessions on the phone back 2 3 years ago. It's been a while. And Sarah did a great job. She helped redirect me in certain areas. Um, I was really for a long time. Couldn't really function like I used to, and I found a way, you know, to uh, to make it through. It's definitely not easy. There's reminders of Joey all around here. You can see some of them behind me. But to me, that's therapy. I don't know, Sarah, you may want to comment on that. To me, this is therapy because I feel like he's still with me because all of his, and memorabilia are all around me. So I don't know. Am I perpetuating the grief by having these things around me? Well, I
No,
think
I think they
I think
show
it's
you
healing.
why you do what you do.
Yeah, I think it's healing. I really do. And so I have a good feeling when I'm sitting in this chair because, like I said, all of his stuff is around me. What do you think, Sarah?
I think that what's behind you are the reasons you do what you do. They're the reminders of Joseph Russell. I love that name. See, we're two name people too. Um, that's the reason. That's the little guy that made all this come to pass.
Right.
And one of the things I think for guilt is that if we can back up, if we can take it from the point of death, and I'm going to get a little bit, I'm not going to get any specific um, denomination, but I am going to say that we know that at the point of death, there is no more suffering. Okay. I think we can all accept that across the board, that death is the end of suffering. I think if we can back up and look at what we acted upon, did we act upon what we knew and what we thought was the best decision? I think all of us would say we acted on what we thought at the time was the best decision.
Absolutely.
And then back it up from that again. We can't go into if I had, well, if you had known, then maybe you would have made a different decision, but you didn't know. One woman who shared with me that her veterinarian was on vacation and the vet that was visiting wasn't even licensed in the state, and her animal died. And so there's all kinds of stuff with that. I mean, there's things, but we don't want to get so involved in what they did that we forget about the heart that's broken. And so I think that releasing us, you have to release yourself. There is no more suffering, which includes there is no blame. So I believe that none of our little loved ones, our little fur babies, none of them are suffering and none of them are blaming. And so if we've chosen to blame ourselves, we're kind of elevating ourselves to a high position that we don't really maybe have the position to do. I mean, we're making ourselves so important in this, and we're important as their pet parents. But if we raise ourselves up to the fact that we know all, end all, then why were we not vets? Because we chose to do what we chose to do, and they chose to do what they chose to do. And unfortunately, some of their decisions did not work out well for our pets. But we cannot take on their blame, and we can't take it on and mask it as our own guilt. I haven't talked to one person nor read one thing on Joey's legacy in 3 years that has implied to me that any of the pet owners did anything wrong. And so, I'd like to suggest to you that you use even tonight as a stopping point. Doing as what I don't know whether or not I did this with you, Scott, but there's what we call stop talking. When you start running through all of those things, I should have done this, I could have done this, is to just say stop and to say it commandingly to yourself. My kids laugh at me all the time because I have one child who has some severe issues with anxiety. And so when that child says to me, I'm really, really anxious, I will say, you know what I do? Because I get anxious. I say, not today, not today. And this is where the neuropsych comes in. The brain hears what the mouth says, but does not attach to it emotionally. It hears a command. It's in a commanding voice. It's saying, stop, not today. And the body is like a little child. Oh, somebody said stop. It's not I said stop. Somebody said stop. Not today. Okay. And so you find yourself backing up a few steps. And usually that's enough time to take a deep breath. And if you find yourself saying, not today, not today, not today, not today, all day long, that's call me. Okay, call me. And we'll do some other exercises. I have left that open that I am available for free to talk to everybody the first time. It's free the first time. If you like me, great. If you don't like me and you don't think I can help you, that's fine. I don't take it personally. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. As long as I'm my husband's cup of tea, and as long as I'm my fur baby's cup of tea, I'm good. So I think it's important those are kinds of things that you can practice. Get off of your own back. And what you do is you take that guilt and you mix it up with the anger and you project it out. And honestly, it comes out as vomit. And nobody wants to be covered with vomit.
Right.
So if you're doing that to people and they're doing this to you, that's the reason that you're vomiting on them. And so just back off. It is not your fault. And you can give me all the yeah buts you want to. I'm a pro at those. All the yeah buts. Oh yeah, but my situation is different. Not really. Not really. I'd ask the same questions. Did you know any better at the time? Did you do the best you could,
Yeah.
knowing what you did? And you did. And so, bless you, my child. You're you're not you're not guilty.
It, that would be something that raised Catholic, so guilt is like that's something embedded in me. But I always wonder, is there a difference between guilt? It's like actual guilt should be when you have actively done something.
Mm-hmm.
But I always feel like there's a different name for something like this,
It's
where
false
you
guilt. There is a name. It's called false guilt.
fault what?
False guilt is what
Oh,
it's called. There actually is a psychological term, and it's false guilt.
I thought there should, because I think when you don't
I'm not hearing you.
do something results in you doing something that you didn't know was going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
be guilt because you didn't know it was going to happen, or you took, I don't know, the right steps to avoid it. But one of the things I say, Scott, a lot of times when I'm feeling bad, and this isn't just for Scott, but every one of our listeners, I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of difficulties here with my computer going on. I catch myself doing this sometimes is what would I say to somebody else? So in this case, I would say if somebody came to me and said, I feel like it was my fault that I would, what would I say to them so that I can say it to myself? Because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people give up. So I
You know, I don't mean this as that anyone is a drama queen or anything like that, because a lot of what I say to you are things that I've had to say to myself. I am. There have been a lot of tragedies in my life, and so for a while, I really thought that someone spoke this to me once, 35 years ago. Said, "Oh my God, Sarah, it's like you're Elmer Fudd with a black cloud over your head, and everything that could go wrong does." And when somebody says that to you, I don't care how old you are. You know, I just turned 60. Um, so I was probably 30, 25. That became my reality. Is there must be something, I must cause this somehow. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's the same thing as people casting blame on people, is the fact that most of the time they don't have an answer. Or when you go up to someone who has lost as we were talking about earlier, they've lost a pet, they've lost a relative, and you say, well, they're in a better place. Oh my goodness, I could throat punch somebody when they do that. And see, I'm revealing my own little weaknesses now. You don't hear psychologists usually say that they could throat punch somebody, but I could. I could throat punch somebody when they say they're in a better place, or, well, at least they didn't do such and such. At least they didn't suffer long. At least they did. Don't quantify or qualify my grief. My grief is mine. It is the most intimate, personal collection of emotions and physical characteristics of anything else we go through in our life. Even joy is more clearly defined. Um, Grief is like spaghetti; it just goes all over the place and in and out of everything, and it's part of your verbiage. It's part of your thinking. It's part of the way you sleep and the way you feel. Um, and so we all have to believe that we were created for a reason, you know, and our interactions with our fur babies are for a reason. We have this wonderful thing called life that sometimes really stinks. You know, Scott, you've certainly been through some things recently that stunk. I mean, I don't think you'd stand up and go, "Oh, I want to sign up for that again."
It was actually life changing for me. I now compare anything like I just had a little bit of a dental issue that was really bothering me prior to the COVID. I would have had a whole different attitude. Now my attitude is, well, at least I'm not laying in ICU with COVID.
Yep, yep.
So I've been able to put things in perspective. It
And I
really has.
think our fur babies help us to gain perspective. That's one of the greatest gifts they give us, is that we get perspective of what it is to be unconditionally loved. And I haven't, I can't say, even though I adore my husband and he adores me, there are some conditions. You know what I mean? I mean, there are some conditions. And so there is unconditional love, there is tremendous patience. It doesn't matter what we wear, what we smell like, where we've been, they love us. There is devotion. There is a true desire to be with us. And so that perspective of having known that, if we can grab that and say, I know what it is to be loved. Um, it might not be the way you want to be loved. It might not be by who you want to be loved, but I don't care. This is about me. And I have no question. And so how wonderful is that? The fact that they are no longer with us is awfully painful. But one of the things I've done to gain perspective over the years is Jerry was 9 when she died. And if you know that the lifespan of most German Shepherds is not a whole lot longer than that. And so now, 16, 17 years later, I know Jerry would be gone anyway. So isn't that silly? I say to myself, okay, I know she would be gone by now anyway. So I would have been grieving in some way by now anyway. And I let myself off the hook of the fact that she got out, that she got a bad deal. And, but she knew to the very end that she was loved. No question. No question.
I this Kathy, I think first off, we have a comment coming through from Kathy Barron, and it's hurting my heart right now. She said that I'm gonna cry almost. I can't read it.
That's okay. Would you like my water? Here.
She said I was told it was my fault because her baby was injured because she took him to the vet for an elective surgery, and that's where he died. And so someone told her that it was her fault because it was
That's
an
a
elective
lie.
surgery.
Kathy, I want you to know that that's a lie. And that's a lie from someone who likes to project blame. I would venture to say, as a professional as well as an infuriated pet owner, um, that is someone who finds it necessary to have absolute answers for things and finds it easier to project blame than to say something compassionate like "I'm really sorry." So that could be in your. We all have to go through our friends sometimes, and you watch. This is how this is going to come out. How this is going to get repeated, Scott. You just wait. We all have to go through our friends sometimes, like an index, a Rolodex, and we have to look at what does this person add to my life, and what do I add to theirs. And if we say I am only adding to their life, and they really add nothing to my life, then move them to the acquaintance pile and not the friends.
Right.
And that's someone that I would do that with. I would say that is certainly not a friend, possibly an acquaintance, and it could even have been a stranger who just happened to hear it and said that. That's cruel, it's unnecessary, and it's a lie.
Well, even if it were true, then fine.
Well, do you?
It,
I know there's someone out there that can relate to this. So you take your healthy dog to get spayed, which is elective, and the veterinarian butchers your dog. Is that your fault because your veterinarian in a drug induced state butchered your dog? No. It's because of that veterinarian's incompetence, that veterinarian's drug addiction, and that veterinarian's poor choices. Has nothing to do with the decision of the pet owner.
I'm so sorry, Kathy.
I That is tragic, and I am so sorry. That is so painful.
And I think sometimes people bring their deep, from a very deep place, they bring their belief system. So I don't know the whole story surrounding this. I'm going to assume that I think I know this story, that it is from a neuter. And sometimes people are so against spaying and neutering animals that they get so wrapped up in it being an elective to get when they're talking to somebody who actually went through it. It's very cruel to have said that, and it's absolutely not your fault, Kathy. I just want to go on record saying that. And
Yeah. That's just unnecessary,
cruel.
unnecessary cruelty. So unnecessary. I'm So my answer is I'm really glad that I am not the therapist for that person, because we would do some real reality therapy. I am such a straight shooter that most people come to me for life coaching than they do for therapy, because I want people to reach down inside themselves and pull up what they have, their experiences, their life story, and use it to create the strength, the foundation to stand on. And when I hear things like that, and believe me, I hear that from women who come and say, my husband knocked my teeth out and broke my arm because he said I deserved it. And the question becomes, but do you believe that? Because unless she somehow believes that, and Kathy, I would say that at some level you believe that, and that's not true. So I hope you heard what we talked about before. Did you do it on purpose? Did you do it? Did you make the decisions, the best decisions, knowing what you knew? And that's where your guilt is set free. And that's where you mark that person off of your acquaintance list.
Well, unfortunately, I think we have to wrap this up a little bit. It's getting late where you guys are. Sarah, we could go on. I feel like I could just sit in this room with you forever and talk about this. I, in just the last 3 days, have lost, and just recently lost. I go through the grieving process. I am going to cry. I won't make it through this sentence, but I grieve almost every day at my work because I own a doggy daycare, and people don't realize it, but I get very, very, very attached to the
I'm so
animals.
glad you do.
And
Say that to you. I'm so glad you do, because then I know that you're going to take the very, very best care of those babies.
I just lost. Just, this week has been tough. We've lost a lot of dogs at the spa this last week, and I mentioned one that passed away. He came to get a bath right before he was going to be put down, and he didn't make it to bath time. We kind of now, him and his mom and I talk about how he never really liked the bath, but she wanted him clean before he was presented to heaven, and so but he didn't like the bath, so he said no. I'm not going to get my last bath. This isn't happening. So he just passed away. But I am so glad that we did this, because I have to counsel a lot of people in my office when we use animals, and it's almost on a daily basis. And
Yeah.
they don't die in my facility ever. This was a rare case, but I get calls almost on a daily basis, as I have a lot of dogs. I've been for generations of dogs, and so we go through these cycles, and we're in a cycle right now. But this has been so helpful for me to be
Good.
able to have it in my head.
Good. Carrie, where are you located?
I'm in Orange County in California.
In California.
Hmm.
It's a little far to take my dog for grooming. I was thinking if you were over where Scott used to be, I would take the day and go over. No, you're a little far.
Yeah, I'm a little far. I'm still, but this has been a blessing for me. I hope it's been a blessing for all of the people that are listening, and just knowing that Joey's legacy is not just here to help with veterinary malpractice, but you've created a community, Scott, of people that I think are growing. I think you do a really good job, Scott, of, like Sarah said earlier, you don't want to be a part of an organization that is just there to allow you to stay in that really horrible spot from like the moment that it happened. You don't want to stay in that moment where it happened and every day feels like the same day that it happened. And I scroll through and I read some of the stuff, Scott, that you say and some of the people on your site say, and I think it's a really great organization, not only because it is going to make change, but it is
Mhm.
helping people move through this grieving process. And so I don't know if you know that your organization is doing a lot more than in making a change in how our pets are seen. I think it's wonderful, and bringing on Sarah is evident of that. So having Sarah here today, and you guys, just thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Well, thank you. What an honor. I was so excited when you invited me.
Mm,
And I think that the point that you make is great, that this is more then you can never give more than you have. And it's been very organic for Scott. I've seen big changes in Scott since I first met him. And it's because as he moves, then he's able to do more and more. You can't expect things of people who are not there yet. And he is so there yet in some of the areas. He is, and Scott, God bless you. If you only know, I hope you do, how many of us have been praying for you and cheering for you and rooting for you, and you know the grand poobah of
Yeah.
Joey's legacy. And thanks to your wife for taking such wonderful care of you.
Yes, she kind of saved me a few times after I got home. It was 47 days away from home, and then another month at home, not being able to walk, and then finally one day I stood up, and then a few days later I started walking, and then with a walker, and then with a cane, and then with nothing.
Well, there's
So
a special crown for her. I want you to know that she gets
absolutely,
a special crown.
and I tell her that all the time. She's a very humble person. She doesn't accept that very well, and I guess I don't either, for that matter. So, but we make a good pair. We
Good.
make a good pair, and
Thank you very much.
oh, there she is.
Oh, can she stick her face on for a minute?
Yeah. Okay. Come on. Take the towel. She'll be here in a second.
Okay. I know it's happening. She's doing this.
Quick, as there's a lot of comments from people saying thank you so much. I want to thank you all. You're all incredible leaders. Thank you, Scott rules. And then Kathy said,
Yay! Debbie, you are amazing. You are amazing.
He can be
Thank you
hard.
for,
He can be hard-headed sometimes.
you know what? I know that. I know that. But he's really a pushover. And I know you figured that out a long time ago.
Yeah, that's
Anyway,
right.
thank you so much for your support of him and of Joey's legacy, because we know behind every great man is a great woman. And so there's a crown in heaven for you, gal.
Absolutely.
Thank you. You got
Thank
me
you.
crying now.
Thank you.
I just like it's important that you guys hear this. Like, we all continue to do this. But Kathy says, thank you all. Today was a rough day, and tomorrow will be better because of all of you. So
Thank you.
she's just saying thank you to you guys. So, Sarah, how can people reach you? Can they reach out to you and talk to you if they need to?
Well, I have a guest room. I'm kidding. They can they can email me at Sarah with an H, Sarah Byrd PhD at Gmail. I am very bad about keeping up my Facebook page, but they can go to the Radius group, which is my practice page, or they can call me at area code 813-501-3318.
And
Okay.
we can get a hold of
They can also go to joeyslegacy.org and click on our team, it's got Sarah's got her own page on there, so it's got all her information and contact. Yeah.
Okay. I'm
And then-
so privileged to be a part of this team, Scott.
We love
Really. And Carrie, thank you so much, because you've been an awesome moderator. And thank you for the fact that you're vulnerable enough to have tears, because I want my babies taken care of by somebody like you.
Oh my, I'm like, don't start, because if you give me the ability to cry, like my eyes are like forget more people, and now I'm scared. I'm like, oh my gosh, now the floodgates are open. I'll just start bawling at the drop of a hat. But Max, this dog that just passed away a couple days ago, comes into my head, and I'm gonna start crying. But I don't want to, because this is so important. We have to donate to get the documentary. I know I'm gonna have to say it, but if we don't get this documentary made, there's more animals that are going to suffer, and we know that we wouldn't be here if we didn't know there was a huge problem that needs to be addressed. So please, if you haven't already donated, if you haven't listened to our roundtables before, I also mention other ways that you can donate. You can, if you can't donate your money, you can definitely donate your time. You can donate by sharing this information everywhere so other people might be able to donate. You can go on Amazon. You can be, if you buy anything from Amazon, you can put it under, it's called Smile, and then a portion of your, even if it's 50 cents, and I shop a lot. So I always say I donate every day to Joey's Legacy because I'm on Amazon a lot. But I think those things all add up. So there's a lot of things you can do to donate to this organization. And, you know, even in memory of your pet that you have lost, this is, I think, a great legacy for you to do as well, is to be a part of something that is going to make a difference, but we need to get the documentary made. So those are just some things you can do. Donate your time, you can donate your money, you can buy a shirt, you can put so much you can do.
I am so sorry. My phone is ringing.
We're going to go ahead and sign off. So see you guys at the next roundtable. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye, Sarah. Thank you,
Bye.
Carrie.